folks, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is a regularly scheduled Greer City Council meeting called and convened this evening, August 26th of 2014. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask Councilman Wayne Griffin, if he would, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then if you will, please remain standing for our invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Father God, it's once again a few of your humble servants come calling on thy holy and righteous name. Father God, I want to say thank you. Thank you for all the many wonderful blessings that you bestowed upon us, for truly you've been better to us than you have, and we've been to ourselves. Now, Father, if you would come and be a part of this meeting, Father, lead, guide, and direct us. These are all the blessings, yes, in your precious Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
We have a time that we set aside for public forum, an opportunity for those of you to speak that have concerns regarding items that are going to appear on the agenda or that might be noteworthy to us as council. Ms. Duncan, anyone to appear in public forum this evening?
No, sir.
Thank you. With that, then, we will move to the minutes of the council meeting from August the 12th, 2014. I'll entertain a motion that they be received. So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk this evening? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Miss Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council departmental reports are contained as usual in your packet. You'll see the activity there from July 2014. Certainly the administrator or department head will be glad to give you detail to any of those reports. And we have Mr. Seifert to give us an update on our financial activity. Mr. Seifert?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we're pleased to bring to you the financial performance summary and the budget reports for July 31st, 2014. At that time, we have general fund revenue of $484,943, general fund expenditures of $981,779, and that expenditure amount carries us 3% under budget. If you'll reference the dashboards, we have a positive benchmark variance on revenue of $204,323, and on the expenditure side, we have a negative benchmark variance of $216. And those two give us a total combined positive benchmark variance of $204,107. And then referencing the cash balance there, we have in the bank at July 31st, $6,717,786. Moving to the hospitality fund, we received in hospitality tax revenues during July $136,991, which is 1% over budget. We have expenditures of $16,641 and a carrying cash balance at July 31st of $549,805. And then finally, referencing the stormwater fund, we have revenue recorded in July of $4,694, expenditures of $31,315, and a carrying cash balance at July 31st of $847,105. And as always, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have now or at some other time during the in the future.
Questions or comments from Mr. Seifert? Thank you, sir. We appreciate the update. We have one petitioner that would like to come before us this evening. Mr. Dennis Elmore has a concern in regards to our sanitation contractor. And Mr. Elmore, the floor is yours, sir. If you would, for the record, if you'll just state your name and address, that'll give us something for the record. Thank you, sir.
I'm Dennis Elmore. I live at 325 Half Rock Circle, City of Lyman, Greer, Riverdale subdivision. And I come forward tonight on a trash issue. I own a house here on Parker Street. My wife and I bought it a couple of years ago. The week we bought it, garbage can turned up missing. And so I went down and I found out across the tracks there's a department to go to. And he says, well, go down to the police department, fill out a report, and then scour the neighborhood and see if you can find it. Well, shortly after that, I kind of gave up the situation. I found a broken can. I've been using it for 2 years, but I'd really like to have a new garbage can. It's broken from wood. It's been picked up and dumped in the trash can for years. This evening, I get nervous talking in front of everybody, so I've written everything and I've left you pictures, but you can just pass them around and look at what the damages are. The garbage company has lately dumped hydraulic fluid, trash water on a weekly basis down my street. It stinks like you can't believe. It's stained the streets. I can't get anybody to clean them or take care of it. Again, today we have a big pile of trash water down in front of our house. You open the front door and that's what blows in. Can't seem to get any resolution on that. And my last item is next to that same pool in our subdivision, there's no light. I've almost hit people walking at night. Other people have almost been hit at night. I'd like to have a safety light installed. I'd pay for it. There's a pole there already. For somebody getting run over, some child or ducks, that kind of thing. I'd pay for the light. That's basically all I'm just asking is that we have, a clean garbage can, clean street, and a safety light. And whatever I can do to help with that, I'd be honored to.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We will pass this along to staff. I know Ms. Bookert has met with some of the neighbors, and I believe yourself, and has made the staff aware of these issues, and we will follow up with the staff in that regard. All right, council, I'm going to take an opportunity to move from behind the podium to, or behind the dais here to the podium as part of my responsibilities for the board at 10 at the top to give you an update on the activity and the work of 10 at the top and an event that is coming up that you've got some information about there at your desk. And so with that, I am going to talk a little bit about 10 at the Top, an organization that we have been a part of since its inception and are proud of that. It is an organization that is fairly unique in terms of its nature. You can see here that it was formed in 2005 as Upstate Together from an original board of folks that had come together to create a dialogue about issues that were relevant to the Upstate and how we could address those in a fashion that was most effective and efficient. At the time, the focus was fairly straightforward. We were looking at water issues, air quality issues, and some other issues that affected the Upstate. But as you'll see later on in the presentation, that has grown. The thing that I like about this particular organization is that, well, number one, that it has been active, it has been effective, but it also brings a wide spectrum of people together. The investors are both public and private, as well as nonprofit and education. It brings together some of the folks from across the Upstate that are involved in industry, are involved in higher education, are involved on the political side and the private side as well. And you can see that reflected in the funding. Approximately 7% of our funding comes from grants, 65% from the private sector, 25% from community organizations, and 3% from the government. It is an organization that has tried to strengthen that number on the government side and has made some headway in that in the last year or two. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to attend one of the meetings that typically are held out at BMW, which are geared particularly towards those public elected officials. Those have been very insightful. The organization hired a full-time director in 2010. Dean Hebel, that many of y'all know and has been here on several occasions, is the director of that organization and now has a staff of 2 other members that assist him with that. There's a vision and a mission statement there. I won't take time to read those, but as you will see, the vision statement confirms what I was just talking about in terms of collaboration and coordination around an effort based on the 10 counties that are located at the top of the state, thus the name, 10 at the top. And then a mission statement that talks about the fact that it isn't an organization that is specifically geared towards a particular item. Unlike organizations like the Upstate Alliance, who is tasked with economic development, our mission is much broader than that, and Upstate Alliance is a member of 10 at the top. Another organization, other organizations that you may be familiar with, that Upstate Forever is another organization. They are members at 10 at the top. In fact, Brad Weich was one of the original founders of 10 at the top when it came together, because they were looking at those very specific environmental issues, water and air quality, particularly air quality at the time in regards to economic development, and how that conversation may be broadened, because one of the things that we understood was that Upstate Forever's idea about what needed to be addressed and how it needed to be addressed needed to be balanced with the needs and the desires of those folks that were doing economic development as well, too. Also needed to be balanced with those folks that were doing the planning around traffic issues on 85 and other places. Needed to be vetted with politicians in terms of how to move forward. And one of the things that we realized was that there were a number of people working on solutions under their own umbrella, but nobody had been looking at it from a larger picture point of view. This organization exists solely to be that sort of neutral playing ground. This is an organization who takes these key items and takes these key regional issues and allows folks to talk about them in an environment where everybody gets to express an opinion and we can work towards what is mutually best for the upstate. And we've had some amazing success doing that. One of the things that this organization does, obviously, is continues to monitor, measure, and analyze that information and how we're moving forward on addressing some of these issues. What we did to introduce the 10 at the top to the upstate was an event that happened several years ago. We engaged more than 21,000 residents across the upstate and 300 in actual meetings. You'll remember that this was an event that was held that looked at addressing growth and transportation issues in the upstate. It drew folks from all 10 counties. And out of that meeting came this idea that we wanted to create some drivers. This was a publication that was done following that meeting called Our Family, Our Future, and Our Upstate. This was the synopsis, really, of the ideas that came out of that first event where we looked at the growth issues. We identified some concerns that had come from that, and we looked at what we wanted to do in terms of a shared vision, and we came up with the 2030 Shared Growth Vision Plan. Now, it's pretty simple and it's very straightforward, as you can see. It uses some of the key words that we use. It uses some of the key vision and mission statement phrases that we use. So it's centered around those things that we know and that we understand, that we value, and that we wish to protect. And here are the vision drivers for the 5 areas that we came up with out of that and has been sort of our guiding principles since this organization was founded. We look at areas called human potential, economic and entrepreneurial vitality, sustainable growth, natural beauty and resources, and community vibrancy. These were the 5 drivers that came out of those initial surveys, those initial meetings, and the research that was done from the organizations that were there about the 5 things that were, for lack of a better word, sacred to us about the upstate, and how we wanted to protect those, and how we wanted to measure those, and how we were going to make sure that For our families, for our future, and for our upstate, we were going to plan in a sustainable fashion to address these driver areas as best that we could. All 5 of these driver areas have active subcommittees that are now at work, doing their work on various different projects in the upstate. One of the things, and this is probably one of the easiest for us to demonstrate in terms of projects that have come about, has been the information hub. This is a website that you'll want to jot down and feel free to share with others. But you'll see there's www.ourupstatesc.info. One of the things that we figured out very quickly was that we were working with a number of different organizations in 10 different counties. And planning, as you can imagine, on a 10-county basis was a tremendous task. This started as a very simple project, a way for us to create a calendar for the 10 counties so that as we did planning, we could look at what was going on in various different areas. And as we got into doing the website, it became very apparent that there was a wealth of information that could be shared with the citizens not only of the upstate, but of the state, of the United States, and internationally. As you can see, this has grown from what started out as virtually just an online calendar to over 22,000 views per month now, 15,000 unique viewers. You can go to this site and you're going to find Chamber of Commerce's, schools, cities, counties, nonprofit organizations, and others are going to put information on here about events that are going on in the upstate. So it gives you a one-stop shop for over 250 links to various different communities and events and resources. Quickly, I want to walk through some of the highlights. We won't touch on every one of these, but it gives you a sort of quick sense about how the 5 driver areas are shaping some of the initiatives that we take on. Senior issues as part of the human potential piece of it is one thing that we're working very, very hard on. The upstate elected officials meetings have been well attended. An opportunity for, and this has really been good for county, city, state, school boards, any number of elected officials to come together around a central idea that we share information during those meetings, and they've been well attended. Schools, breathing air, clean air programs, organizational support for people with disability, and you'll see partnering with the Hughes Investments to create Elevate Upstate grants programs. The City of Greer was the recipient of one of the first 3 grants that were made for this particular piece of the project, and it was used for the funding for the Greer International Festival. So it's already been a direct, has had a direct impact on the City of Greer. More, as you can see, in terms of some of the applications that have been done here and some of the efforts and how broad they are. The second item up there where the United Way in the upstate is created and is supporting the Upstate Born Learning Early Childhood Education Messaging Campaign. This is where the United Ways from Anderson and the upstate, it was driven by the Anderson United Way and the other United Ways from the upstate have come together and put this program together. And it won a national award this year. So it's a great way to show the collaboration between the upstate. Just like we did several years ago, we're bringing people back together to look at how we want to continue to shape the future. Just like we're doing a master plan right now, Tim is convening to do another plan that will help refine what we want to see the upstate look like as we continue to grow. Many of the issues that we addressed in the first have now either become part of one of the 5 driver areas or have been addressed completely. So this is an opportunity for us to come back together as 10 counties and to look at our future. This is going to take place on Tuesday, September the 16th at the TD Convention Center. This is going to be a morning-long event. It is going to bring all 5 of the driver areas together and give you an opportunity to help shape those. This is a This is a hands-on kind of conference workshop. This is not just come listen to somebody talk for 3 or 4 hours. This is going to be helping us figure out what our agenda for the next 5, 10 years needs to be as we continue to try and help shape our future. At your place, you've got an agenda for the summit that will be coming up, at least a tentative agenda. I think I've got enough of these to give to our media folks or anybody else that's interested. And if we run out, I'll be glad to send you one. Registration is now open. You can attend this event and register online to do so, and you will see there from the agenda that there are a number of breakout sessions and times that you'll be able to be part of shaping the future. I can guarantee you as a speaker at the last event and heading up one of the breakout sessions that it brings a broad range of people as well as ideas together. So if you are interested in expressing your views and hearing the views of others that may be dissimilar from ours, you oftentimes will agree with that. But that's part of this process is that we are working together to find out what is best for us as a region. I think that you will find that this effort is fairly unique. There's not another area in our state that has been as successful as we have in attempting to do one of these types of efforts. And you see it in the results that I showed you just a little while ago of some of the efforts that the Upstate Alliance has been able to undertake and some of the things that we've already addressed since our last summit. So take note of that. So Tuesday, September the 16th, go ahead and get registered if you'd like to be a part of that opportunity to help shape the upstate. Any questions? All right. Well, I appreciate it. So while we are changing gears and changing presentations there, we have the opportunity this evening to have another overview of one of our own departments. And Kirsten Presley, who is our court administrator, is here this evening to give her annual report on the court system and some updates. And we always look forward to these opportunities to hear from those that represent the various different departments in our city. And so with that, we'll turn the floor over to you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. It's my privilege to come before you tonight to present the annual municipal court report. Greer Municipal Court serves the community as the judicial arm of the city and is responsible for the administration of justice. Our efficient and courteous staff serves the public with integrity, professionalism, and respect. We continuously strive to exceed expectations in our service to our customers and the community. All of this we do while adhering to all of the South Carolina Code of Laws and all policies and procedures set forth from the South Carolina Court Administration. Our hours of operation have changed a little bit since last year. We're still open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, which is open to the public. What we've changed is our evening hours. They were in the past 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. We found that we had a greater need to have a ministerial recorder or an administrative judge there later hours at night for the officers. So we've switched that schedule to 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. This has accommodated third shift during those hours early in the morning where it's really hard to find a judge to issue a search warrant or an arrest warrant. It has eliminated the need of calling in staff when they're at home in the bed for us. And it's also reduced the amount of temporary commitments we've had to have taking prisoners to Greenville County LEC to leave them and then bring them back over in the morning to see a judge. So far this has been very successful for us. We have weekend hours on Saturdays and Sundays that are not open to the public, but we do have a ministerial recorder there who issues arrest warrants, search warrants, orders for production, and they're there to allow bondsmen or friends or family to bond out people that they have in jail. We also hold arraignments twice a day as a minimum. During emergency circumstances, we may do arraignments 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, just depending on what's going on. In order to accomplish this, we have 2 full-time ministerial recorders and 3 part-time ministerial recorders. The part-time recorders alternate weekends and holidays. Our courtroom usage and our hearing room usage has continued to be a very, very busy place. As I said, arraignments are a minimum of twice daily, so everything kind of circles around that. We have traffic court every Wednesday. We have preliminary hearings, which are Greenville County charges for general sessions, a higher level than what we would hear in our court. But these are probable cause hearings, and they're done on a per request basis by the defendant. So we hold those the first Friday of every month. We have pretrial conferences. These are in preparation for jury trials. We have these 5 to 6 days out of the year. And then we have plea days the Friday prior to a jury trial week to try to resolve any cases that the city prosecutor can before actually taking them to trial. We have jury trials 6 weeks out of the year. We have Judge Sims, our Greenville County Magistrate, who shares the building with us. He has court an average of 5 days a month. He utilizes both the courtroom and the hearing room for his hearings. And then we have other agencies that have used our facilities, such as SADAC, which is Spartanburg Alcohol and Drug Abuse Commission. They're there every Wednesday, and they are there to sign up anyone who's been ordered for drug treatment or alcohol treatment. We can do on-site drug testing with individuals with them there, and they use our hearing room. We have the DMV, who uses the hearing room Mondays and Tuesdays in the morning, and those are administrative hearings for people who have lost their license from DUI charges. By allowing our court to be the upstate facility for that, it keeps our officers from having to leave the city of Greer to go to another county or another city for this. So it saves time and keeps our officers in the city by allowing them to use this. The police department occasionally uses our courtroom for training or for meetings, such as Leadership Greer will come through. We've also had Junior Leadership Greer that came through and did some mock trial work in our courtroom this year. Our arrest warrants have decreased by about 25% this year. We issued 1,166. This was an expected decline. In the prior year, we had a spike in arrest warrants due to a case law, State v. Ramsey, which mandated that all criminal domestic violence, assault and batteries, and shoplifting charges had to be put on a warrant, where in the past some of those could be issued on a ticket. So we expected a spike last year. Once the legislature saw the mess that created, the difficulty it caused for the police department, the difficulty it caused the courts, they amended that, changed the law, and now those particular crimes can be put on a uniform traffic ticket, which has been greatly helpful, especially for the police officers if we don't have someone in the office to issue a warrant. So we expected that decline, and we conducted 1,211 arraignments, which was a slight decrease, about a 6% decrease from the prior year. We did see a decrease in our search warrants and our orders for production of records. 47 search warrants were issued and 7 orders for the production of records. Those are for like phone records or medical records. Those type of records require that. And in order to handle all of this, we hired a new ministerial recorder this year. Her name is Kathy Hiles. She began in May with us. And just about a week ago, on August the 14th, she passed her judge's certification, and she is a certified judge with the state of South Carolina. Very important. Without that, she would not have been able to continue her employment here. Some accomplishments for our ministerial recorders this year. It's mandated that all of them, including myself, have 14 hours of training with 3 hours of ethics. We believe training is vital. This, although it's mandated, we far exceed this. Most even getting somewhere between 35 and 40 hours of training. We get as much training as we can. It is just critical in an ever-changing environment. Daily, the laws change and new case law comes out, so we have to be apprised and on top of everything that changes. So I make sure that everybody gets to as many trainings as we can possibly accommodate with our schedules. Part of that is annual criminal domestic violence training. We were able to get everybody in that, and a new standard with substance abuse and mental health counseling, which is required by judges once every 3 years. We were able to get everybody in on that training this year. We continue quarterly in-house training, which I conduct on Saturdays 4 times a year. And we continue with our online safety training program through the Municipal Association, which is extremely helpful. With the crazy hours that we have and the odd schedules, this has been a huge benefit to us because we don't have to stop everything and send someone out to training. So we continue to use that as well. Some of our challenges in that area this year, as usual, changes in state laws. We've had gun law changes, we've had drug law changes, just to name a couple of the big ones. New case laws. There, of course, we expected the cell phone case law about whether you could search it or not with the texting and driving laws, and of course you can't. They are considered a computer now. But we get these in daily, weekly. It's constant what we get from court administration. We had a big change in our bond procedures this year as to what our judges were able to set and not set. One of the changes was for violent offenders. If a person is out on bond for a crime of violence, and this is defined by law, then they don't get a bond for their next crime of violence. So although we check these records every time, we have to pay particularly close attention to make sure, because the judges at our level aren't allowed to set these bonds. We advise them of their rights. We send them to the county jail, and a circuit court judge has to come in to handle those. Another big law that's changing and is going to continue through the next year is called Emma's Law. This is our new DUI law. It has passed. It goes into effect in October. It is a 34-page law that we are trying to learn that will change the way DUIs are handled at the police level and the court level. This is going to cause a lot of extra work for both officers, for court. It's going to involve probation and parole, even if for first-time offenders. This is going to cause a lot of additional work, and again, unfunded work. We also experienced an employee shortage in our ministerial recorders from September to March due to an extended illness. So we had to juggle personnel around significantly this year. Let me switch to the clerk's achievements now. Again, they get quarterly training, which I conduct 4 times a year. We use the Municipal Association as often as we can. They provide the best training for our clerks. They provide some of the only training for the clerks. It is not mandated that they get training at all, but I require it. So I get them to as many of these trainings as I can get them to. By law, the clerks are called victim service providers, and that requires additional training every year. We were able to complete that. I also have one employee, Colette Patella, who serves on the Wellness Committee, and Ann Pitts, who has served on the Performance Evaluation Committee recently. To continue with their achievements, again, it's a continuous maintenance of all of our files, monitoring of the programs and alternative sentencing that we have, which is a vast amount of programs and sentencing. What we've found is pretty much if Judge Mims can come up with it, we will make it happen. So that takes a lot of time and a lot of follow-up, but it's very successful. We also foster our partnerships with service providers such as Spartanburg Alcohol Drug Abuse Commission and our Domestic Violence and Anger Counseling group, Family You Can't Beat Them. And again, we also do the quarterly online safety training, which is very beneficial. Some of the challenges the clerks have experienced this year, the numerous state laws and case laws that have changed. Again, the judges have to learn it, but what people don't realize is all of the clerks also have to learn it. They have to know all of the parts of the law, all the paperwork that goes with it. They have to be able to answer the questions about it, and sometimes they have to answer questions in the courtroom for whoever's on the bench that day. If we have a visiting judge, they have to be able to tell them what the paperwork is, what the procedure is. So this is very taxing on them as well. Emma's Law will be a huge change for them. It will change all of the paperwork at the end of the process for convictions that they have to fill out and what they have to follow up on. And they've learned all the new changes in the bond procedures and paperwork. They have to be knowledgeable in all of those areas. They also have to adhere to all of the changes from South Carolina Court Administration. And then we have expungements. They fixed the State v. Ramsey. They did not fix expungements. What they have done is they've amended it again, as they have done almost every year since 2009. But they've not amended it to help us. This year they've included more. Last year they made us remove from the public index anybody that was found not guilty, their case was dismissed or not processed, even if they were not fingerprinted. Now, an expungement order is also called a destruction of arrest records. However, now it doesn't matter whether you're arrested or not. If it's criminal, we have to expunge it. So this is going to drastically increase the amount of expungements that we have to process. We processed 489 last year. And that is split between 4 of us that do them, that actually process them out. But in the end, all 489 come to me. I review them, I approve them, I remove them from the computer, and I send them to all the agencies they belong to. So this will be a very, very taxing procedure as they continue to add more onto us without any additional funding. Just some points of interest from this year. We had a very successful SLED audit in January. Although we do not have a SLED terminal, we do have an agency ORI code because we are allowed to pull criminal histories. Therefore, we are included in any audits from SLED to make sure we're handling the paperwork correctly. We got very, very short notice of this, but it was very successful and we were completely in compliance and will continue to do so from this point on. We had a site visit from Spartanburg City Court. Their judge and clerk of court came to visit us, not just to see the layout of the building, but to see how we processed and organized, and left us after a few hours with a lot of ideas and a lot of follow-up phone calls. So we're always glad to accommodate another court that wants to come in and watch us. Carol Reynolds, Suzette Kimmons, and myself went through the supervisor's webinar through the ICMA. That was a 6-month commitment. We worked with junior leadership Greer to do mock trials. Everyone that drives a city vehicle completed the AAA driver's education program, and we were able to include team building this year, where I was able to get all of the staff together after hours to really work on our team building. Strategic plan. Again, this is an area where we don't have a lot that we can do in it because we're a reactive department. But we will always work on our customer service program. There's always room for improvement in how we handle our customers. And our community service program, which is a partnership with the police and public services. We have about a 95% success rate with this community service program, which is headed by Sergeant Richardson at the police department. Have about 1,260 hours completed this year. About 500 gallons of litter picked up per weekend as we shifted from outsourcing our community service workers to other nonprofit agencies to us using them under strict supervision. And so we're able to clean up the roads in the city of Greer using this, and public service provides a list of roads that need the maintenance, need the cleanup, and then they pick up the bags of it afterwards. So this is a really good way to use our community service workers within just the city. Our cases filed and disposed increased tremendously this year. We had a 98% increase. We had 9,706 cases filed, and we disposed of almost 9,900. So it was a big increase for us this year. It's been really, really busy. On the bright side, our bench warrant activity has decreased, which is always good news. Not only did it decrease to 517 bench warrants, but we disposed of 576. So we're getting rid of more than what we're bringing in. So we're not just adding to the warrant file at the police department. They are serving them. People are responding to notices we're sending out. So we're actually able to get rid of those cases and dispose of them. With an increase in caseload, there's always an increase in jury trials. We had a 10% increase with 294 trials this year, and that's just to be expected. They go hand in hand. When the caseload increases, the jury trial caseload will also increase. And we do hold 6 terms a year to make sure we keep on top of this and keep up with all the state regulations as to how long we have to process these out. Our preliminary hearings, which again are for Greenville County General Sessions charges, these are upon request only. They're not automatic. We had 313 of these this year, which was a 19% increase for us. Again, this is a lot of paperwork notifying defendants, attorneys, and all victims in all these cases. So this was a big increase in our daily work. Our total money collected increased 37% this year. So on top of all the other duties that the clerks have, they also have more money to collect and account for. $845,199.56, with an increase of the total money collected. Of course, there was an increase in our revenue by 39%. So our revenue for the last fiscal year was $300,303.90. So again, it's been a very busy, very productive year, and I'll be glad to entertain any questions anyone has.
Ms. Presley, in regards to our ministerial recorders, and the hours that we're keeping on the weekends now, as well as the third shift hours there, they're able to set bail.
Yes.
So there shouldn't be an occasion where somebody is detained at our facility longer than just those hours that nobody is there, right? I mean,
Correct.
Somebody shouldn't be in there for a full 24 hours or a day. Or that
Correct,
sort of
unless
thing,
they
even
just-
on the weekends now.
That's correct, just
Okay.
unless they don't intend to bond out. There's an opportunity 7 days a week, including holidays, for someone to bond out of there.
Okay. Emma's Law, in
Yes.
regards to Emma's Law, and you were talking about the DUIs, is that now going to circumvent the pretrial intervention process that has been available on the first offense DUI? You mentioned now that there would be probation involved.
Well,
Is
there's
that still-
not been so much a pretrial program for DUIs. What this is going to do is it's going to add the ignition interlock device as an option. So people that in the past had their license suspended for a definite amount of time can opt for that suspension time, or they can pay for this ignition interlock device, which will be monitored through probation and parole. Some of the offenses require it no matter what. The problem with that is the paperwork we have to do to send to the probation and parole, and then any violation of that will end up back in our court as a new charge. So we'll have all of the contempt that comes back from that and all of the failures to comply for someone driving someone else's vehicle or having someone else blow into the device to register their VAC, those kind of things. So that's going to, they'll still be able to get some temporary licensing, like through the DMV originally, but almost all of those elements are going to include ignition interlock now.
Wow.
Do you have a dollar amount about on the unfunded mandates that we're getting?
I do not. There has been a lot on the MCAA listserv actually today about some committees meeting. Greenville City put together some really good dollar amounts. Between the postage, you have on one expungement where there are fingerprints, you could have to mail that to possibly 8 different places. So it is a lot of paper, a lot of ink, a lot of postage, and a lot of manpower. I could get those numbers for you, but it will take me a little while to compile those.
So it can be done electronically?
No, you have to type each one.
Oh, wow.
It pulls in from the case on the computer some information, but then you have to go in and fill in that form. The process for one expungement, depending on the type of case it is, can take anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour to process one. And that's just with us. Then they go to the police department. They have to process them as well.
And then you have to review them before they're sent.
I review all of them before they're sent, because once they're taken out of the computer, that's it. You can't get them back. So I'm the only one with access to take them out.
Others? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for all you're doing.
Good job.
And please tell Judge Mims that we saw his smiling face. We thank you for all he does as well. Don, we would have preferred to see his smiling face in person, but we'll let that ride tonight. Mr. Driggers, I believe you've got an administrative report for us, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, I do have a number of items to bring to your attention this evening. A few of those are calendar items. I'll begin with one of those being an invitation that is being extended to you. It is coming to us directly from our former state senator, Louis Vaughn, and a committee of folks that he is working with. Congressman Trey Gowdy will be in the district on September the 5th, and as part of his attendance at the event, they will be dedicating the Veterans Corridor of Honor. You may not be familiar with that, but it is a stretch of I-385. It's a 12-mile section of that highway. Every 2 miles will designate and honor one of our wars or conflicts in the history of the United States. And this is the only area in the country that this is being done in. Our folks that have been responsible for developing this program are quite proud of it, as they should be, and they're wanting to invite you to come and celebrate the dedication of that honor corridor. That'll be taking place on September the 5th at 10 a.m. I'll have some information coming to you, but it'll be there right off of the interstate at mile marker 22 down in the Fountain Inn area where one of the markers is located. And again, I'll have some information coming to you about that. But that invitation is extended to you on behalf of the Congressman's office as well as many of our representatives here in the area. But again, one of the key folks that was instrumental in this program was Louis Vaughn, former state senator here in the Greer community. Also for your calendar, I would like to remind you that we'll be participating again this year in our regional advocacy meetings with the Municipal Association. The closest one to us will be over in Greenville, and that will be taking place on September the 25th. It is an 11 a.m. meeting. They will have lunch provided for you that day as well. They do a series of these regional meetings across the state. It looks like they have about 11 or so of those scheduled around the state. And the purpose of that is for the Municipal Association to develop their legislative agenda for the next session for the General Assembly of South Carolina. So again, we invite you and we encourage you to come and to participate in that program. You'll be there for a couple of hours, but that is September the 25th. And again, we'll have some additional information that will come out to you on that. One of the things that we like to do periodically is share information with you that's been shared with us about the performance of some of our departments. One of those is a letter that I've received recently that was addressed to the police chief, Dan Reynolds, and also to Captain Hamby. Very briefly, it says, I wanted to pass along compliments to the Greer Police Department as requested by a couple of downtown merchants. I am told that there was a minor issue at a grocery store on Poinsett near City Hall, and that Greer officers responded immediately and handled the situation very well. The merchants wanted me to express that they felt very safe in downtown Greer, knowing that the police would respond so quickly and effectively if needed. And that comes to us by our partners over at the Greer Development Corporation. So we always like to share that information. Very active this time of year as we began a new school year. Wanted to share a few statistics with you. Our traffic unit and all of our officers were involved in the startup of that program. Sergeant Ballinger, who heads up our traffic unit, shared some information with all of the department. Said it reads, I'd like to thank everyone that helped with the kickoff of the school year this year. Extra officers provided visibility in all of our school zones. We received great accolades from the principal at Chandler Creek, and you're to be commended for your efforts. Your balanced approach and understanding attitude has made this one of the most successful school starts that we have had in years. As of this past Friday, August 22nd, officers had issued 108 warnings in our school zones. They issued 38 tickets, and of those 38 tickets, they resulted in 2 arrests. One of those arrests was for DUI, and one of those arrests was for driving under suspension. Our presence in those school zones well noted and obviously well needed, and so we were glad to be able to provide those resources there within the community. We reported to you at your last meeting that we were kicking off the Greer Connect app. That has been very, very successful for us. We are now beginning to document those requests as they are coming in. We are monitoring if they are indicating who they are on those requests. We're monitoring that, and we're monitoring the time between receiving the request, being able to resolve the issue, and then responding back to your constituent, to our citizen, the action that was taken. We're just in the very beginning processes of that, but we received about 22 of those in the first week and about 28 of those in the second week. So we're getting very active participation in that as it's getting started. We will have those reports available, and we will start including some of those reports in the data that we're sharing with you as well, once we've kind of learned how to decipher what these reports mean as well. Obviously, what we're trying to use the documentation, the benchmarking instruments for us is how we can better respond to those inquiries, how we can better respond to those requests for service, and that we can do those more quickly. We're really trying to monitor how long does it take to repair a pothole, how long does it take to get someone to respond to an overgrown lot or grass or an item that needs to be picked up. But it's a work order system for us. It gives us a great paper trail so that we're able to be more accountable for our actions, and we think that that's off to a great start. So again, Greer Connect is out there. We're encouraging our community to use it. You'll see more information on that continuing to come out. But we're really excited that it's a new tool that our community can use. At your last meeting as well, we were asked, Mr. Bettis, you asked us to obtain some additional information about assessing our response to the flood issue. We have had a series of meetings and debriefings with our police department, with our fire department, with our public services department, and also with our flood control manager. Mr. Pace is responsible for that. We are evaluating all of our responses there. We are determining that there are probably some equipment needs that would better suit us in a future situation. So we're trying to assess what those needs may be. We would hope that we would have some additional information forthcoming to you in the very near future as we start to plan in our next fiscal year what some of those budgeted items may need to be or to include. But immediately we are looking at our response to that situation, shared some information with Councilmember Airwood about that same issue as well as we're looking at some training opportunities for us and how we can better equip our personnel for when those types of emergencies occur. So I'm glad to share more of that information with you as we continue to work through it, but wanted you to be aware that that assessment did indeed take place. You are aware, you may recall that I sent some information to you recently that our platform truck, our ladder truck at the fire department, was involved in an accident. This was an accident that was of no fault of our personnel. We had a vehicle, the driver apparently fell asleep at the wheel, struck the truck, but did substantial pretty significant damage to the truck. We are in a bit of a situation, and we will work through that. But we know those trucks are pretty expensive apparatus. The repairs on that truck are now approaching in excess of $55,000. The good news is the driver was insured. The bad news is he had the minimum amount of insurance allowed by the state of South Carolina, $25,000. Needless to say, we will be having some conversation with our representatives at the state level about whether or not minimum $25,000 is appropriate minimum coverage. And we can certainly give an example of what can happen when someone is not covered adequately. We will have a couple of choices that we will need to make as we move forward. We will also be filing a claim against our own insurance for the balance of that. We certainly have the option of allowing our insurance to assist us with that. We have the option of not filing that as a claim because, as you know, we are a pooled insurance program, and when we exercise claims to that fund, there's actually penalties associated to us on our experience modifiers. So there's an issue there for us, and we're trying to determine whether or not that penalty outweighs or not the claim amount. So we're trying to evaluate that at this time as well. And certainly another option that we have available to us is to seek civil action against the individual that was involved in the accident. And I certainly think that is an option that we may want to consider because there may be personal assets that may be available under civil action that we could then have the balance of this that's paid. The bad part is that the $25,000 that's covered under the gentleman's insurance will cover about half. The other half that bill is being footed by the taxpayers of the city of Greer. And that's why we are gravely concerned about that. The ladder truck is out of commission. We are continuing to partner with our neighboring agencies. There have not been any situations that we've had that we have felt that we've not been adequately covered. Our partnering agencies have done a great job of making sure that we're covered. But again, the truck is out of operation. It's out of commission. It is our intent to have the repairs made, and we're moving forward with that. But we wanted to keep you informed and aware of the circumstances involving this particular issue. As we continue to learn more and we'll need some direction from you, we'll come and seek that as well. Any questions about that? That's a pretty big issue for us. Okay, very good. Also, want to make council aware that we have been working with one of our employee committees, Chris Forrester and our Sergeant Forrester and our police department chairs our wellness committee. We have 10 employees that serve on our wellness committee, and one of the responsibilities that the wellness committee has or has been given, they've been asked to evaluate our wellness program relative to how we monitor and use the point system for premium contribution by our employees for employee coverage for their medical insurance. We instituted back in 2008 a program that was designed and intended to educate our workforce of responsibility that they can take in helping us to manage and to actually lower our overall health care cost, our claim cost. We instituted that program also in a desire for us to be able to manage and minimize any type of increases that we may have relative to employee premiums as well as dependent premiums. As you are aware, we provide 100% of that coverage for our employees. We do a match basis of 80-20 for dependent coverage. And when I say we do 100% of our employees, what we really do is that we charge them an annual premium of $600 per year, but we allow them through a series of points of wellness traits to be able to get that down to zero. We have 184 eligible employees for our program. We have 180 employees that choose that program. Of the 180 that are involved in the program, 77 of them have enrolled spouses as dependent coverage, and many others have children as dependents covered under our program as well. Of the 180 that we cover, only 2 of our employees are not currently utilizing the benefit level of being able to get their points to zero. So we believe that we've been very, very successful in that program. I met with all of our employees 1 year ago, did a series of department meetings, and we advised our employees that we were evaluating our wellness initiative and that we anticipated that we would be making some changes to that program in the coming year. The Wellness Committee has done a wonderful job of evaluating that. They brought back a series of recommendations, and we will, administratively, I will be moving forward with a number of those as we begin the 2015 year. But wanted certainly to make you aware of that as we are beginning to make our employees aware of it as well. Our intent has always been and will continue to be that we are promoting a healthy lifestyle and wellness. In doing that, we believe long term that we can better manage and minimize the cost associated with claims. And we also believe that we can promote a healthy workforce, which does a number of things. It lowers absenteeism. It helps us have a more productive workforce as well. We have been monitoring these programs with a number of other municipalities. We've had an opportunity to visit with others as well. Most specifically, those that we've been monitoring have been the city of Anderson that has a very successful program. We've been monitoring the city of Aiken, and we've also been monitoring the town of Mount Pleasant. There are a number of other folks that are involved in these, but we've been particularly attentive to some of the things that these folks have been involved in. Our program has always encouraged, and the points that were allowed were really based on those good traits, things like lower cholesterol, low blood sugar, non-smokers. Those have always been parts of our system. The Wellness Committee is proposing, and we're looking to move forward, that we are being more attentive to that. Many of these have already been included, but as we roll out the program, we would be asking our employees to maintain a minimum. We identified 9 areas. We'll ask our employees to be able to meet 5 of those areas in the first year. And those would include things like they would be able to obtain a point for attending 2 of at least 4 wellness programs that we conduct during the year. We do at least 1 a quarter, and if an employee participates in 2 of those, they would be eligible for 1 point. If their glucose or their A1C blood sugar levels are within the AMA guidelines, which is 5.7 or less, they're eligible to receive an additional point. If their blood pressure is within the AMA guidelines, 120/80 or lower, again, eligible for an additional point. Cholesterol levels within AMA guidelines, 200 or less, 1 point. An annual physical, 1 point. An annual eye exam or a routine dental exam, 1 point. BMI at 29 or less, 1 point. If they sign an affidavit that they are a non-tobacco user, they are eligible for an additional point. And if they participate in a cancer screening, which would include things like skin, breast, colorectal, prostate, cervical, or oral, then they're also eligible for an additional point. What you can see here is that we are moving more from a strategy of awareness and education to results. And that is what we are finding as we review these types of programs, particularly in South Carolina, and we're reviewing these programs nationwide, is that those that have had the greatest amount of success, those that have indeed been successful in managing cost and promoting a healthier workforce, are those that are more result-driven. We believe that since 2008 that we've given ample and sufficient time, and we believe that we've done a very good job of informing and educating our workforce that this is necessary and needed. We believe as we move into 2015, shifting more from that education base to the result base, and then allowing 5 of the 9 areas. As you can see, what we've identified, it really should not be difficult for an employee to be able to meet 5 of those 9 areas. We believe that the bar has to always be raised, and so we want to implement that program, and then 1 year later, as we go into 2016, it is the recommendation of the committee that we would go to 6 of those 9 areas. As we go into 2016 as well, we believe that it would be appropriate, the 77 spouses that we cover under our program that also contribute to and participate and are a factor in our claims, that we would want to educate them in this program as well. So in 2016, we would allow them to participate in the program, and then beginning in 2017, the spouses that are covered under our dependent coverage would be enrolled in our program as our employees are as well. We do not believe that it's appropriate for us to do that with the children that are dependents within our program. We think that that is best managed by the parents and with the health care providers. But we do know that with our adults, who are our largest risk in our claims, that the more that we can educate and promote this healthy lifestyle wellness initiative, that long-term for us, we think that that can be most successful. Again, we are represented by all of our departments. Our wellness committee feels very strongly that this is very doable for us. We believe that we can appropriately roll this out to our employees, that we can get buy-in from our employees on why we're doing this and the benefits long-term, because what we really are trying to do here is promoting a healthy workforce. And by doing that, long-term, it will have significant impact to our claims history, as well as it will help us reduce increased premiums for that coverage as we move forward. Why is that important to us as a municipality? We are self-insured. 100% of the premiums that we pay into this program, we pay on behalf of our employees' families, but we pay that into a fund dedicated solely to pay the claims. The more that we can do to manage that, the less likely we will have increases in that cost. And that's what we're trying to manage as well. I salute the efforts that our committee has made. Lisa Elliott and our HR department has worked very, very closely with them as well. We feel very comfortable in rolling this out. This would be an introduction to our employees in the October, November, December period. It would take effect in January 2015 as we roll into the new year. And then it's a pass-fail type system. If you're successful in the introductory period, it applies to you for the entire calendar year of 2015. We're looking at an opportunity that if someone does not meet the points and they are able to make some changes of how we may possibly be able to get them into the program, maybe at some midway point. We had some discussion on that this week, and I think that's very doable for us. But it rewards good behavior. It rewards good, healthy lifestyle, and it helps manage cost. And we think that's what this program is certainly trying to achieve. We wanted to make you aware of it so that if you had any questions as we began this program and began to move forward, any issues or concerns that you may have, that we're able to address those before we fully implement. So I present that as information. I can and will forward to you some written information that we have on this as well as we're preparing to share it with our employees. But at least on initial response, any questions or concerns or feedback that you may have to offer us this evening, as well as Sergeant Parcher is with us as well. Very
Well, I think it's a good idea, you know, because I'm one of the persons that benefited from
That's right.
change, because I wasn't going to pay money for smoking until I quit smoking. So.
That's right.
And had it not been for that push, I wouldn't have quit. You know, I'm telling you the truth, I wouldn't have quit. But I'm glad I did, you know, and I think that's, you know, anything that we can do to encourage healthy lifestyles would be not only good for the city, but also good for the employees in the long run, you know, and be good for the families too. So I think that's a good idea. I thank the committee for the work that you did too.
Very good. Obviously, we'll continue to be available for questions. Anytime a program like this that affects all of our employees is introduced, there's always a little apprehension with that, and we understand that. We will be doing educational meetings with all of our employees during the health fair this year. So everyone will be walked through that process. We'll share written materials with them. By having 10 members of our employees on our wellness committee, every department being represented, we have a spokesperson inside those departments that can help share how this works, how it will affect our employees as well. But we do understand change can cause a little apprehension, and we want to make sure that we're communicating to our employees that we're doing this for the right reasons, and that yes, it is a change. But it's a change that we've been predicting would be coming for quite some time, and it's just that we're at the point of crossing that threshold. Very good. Wanted to share that with you this evening. And in conclusion, I would ask of you 2 items for consideration in executive session this evening. One is a personnel matter to evaluate the annual department report that we received this evening, and the other is a contractual concerning a potential property acquisition for us as well. But one personnel and one contractual in executive session would be what I would be requesting of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That then we'll move to appointments for boards and commissions. In the Board of Appeals, District 6, Kevin Tumlin has resigned, and I believe you'll find there before you some information in regards to a nomination.
Yes, I have contacted Dewey Tarwater, and he has graciously accepted the appointment and has agreed to serve on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Tarwater has served on a number of boards and commissions for us and is well known to council. I'll entertain a second to that nomination.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any follow-up questions or discussion in regards to Mr. Tarwater's nomination to serve on the Board of Zoning Appeals? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, we were quite surprised to learn that Morris Burton, who has chaired the Planning Commission for a number of years and has served on the Planning Commission for quite some time, will be stepping down effective immediately and will require that the someone from District 3 replace him on the Planning Commission. Mr. Burton has served us, and Glenn, you can help me with that number, 20 plus years? 24 years on the Planning Commission, and we certainly want to express our appreciation to him in a more tangible form than just a thank you tonight, and we will schedule that for an upcoming council meeting so that we can give him the recognition that he is due for his service to the city. And we will make Ms. Booker aware that she will have the tough task of nominating somebody to follow Mr. Burton. With that, then we'll move to items of new business, the only one of which before us this evening is the first reading of ordinance number 21-2014. This is an ordinance to amend the City of Greer zoning code, Article 6, general provisions to add section 613, storage, including the purpose and intent, definitions, conflicts, and penalties in regards to storage facilities. And so with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Pace.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Pace, if I may, just as a matter of introduction, if I may, this item, I was asked today what initiated this process, and we've been involved in it with quite some time. But as a reminder to us, this came out of Council's strategic planning retreat. This was one of the items that we were asked to take a look at and review, and through our planning efforts, that has taken place. We have looked at a number of possibilities relative to this type of an ordinance. We certainly recognize that what's presented to you here is doable, but we also recognize that it is amendable, and because there are a number of things relative to community standards that are established by the legislative body, you. And so while we have attempted to develop some guidelines, we have presented those to our Planning Commission for review, and they ultimately have passed those, and we bring that to you now. Mr. Pace is prepared to give you that background of how we got to these recommendations and the actions that have been taken, but we certainly recognize that this is part of that legislative process, and so we take no pride in authorship other than the task that you challenged us with was to bring you an ordinance, and that's where we are this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. Again, Mayor and Council, after the input from you during our most recent council retreat, we did go back and start some research work and looking into ordinances that deal with storage. We searched high and low throughout the continental U.S. and worldwide via the web. We didn't get to travel for none of these adventures. But looking at what different jurisdictions had done, I looked primarily at jurisdictions that had seaports and jurisdictions that had intermodal ports such as we do. I think one of the primary concerns was the intermodal container and its use after its effective life of being a shipping container, that it being turned into a storage facility or other type facility. So we did look in those areas also, and I did speak with some representatives from North Charleston in respect to that, and conversations with those planning officials down there, and they did advise that those can become out of control issues if they're not regulated. They did look at, they have regulations on tap for their jurisdiction there, and give us some guidance in what we could do in regards to this. So we did take this approach. We did take the three-pronged approach to this. We're looking at this as residential, commercial, and industrial, 3 different type classifications. For the type containers, we did look at the portable storage unit, or commonly known as pods, out there also being an issue, and some of those. But we have different standards for the different classifications. I hope you've had the opportunity to review these, and I will try to answer any questions that you may have at this time in regards to this.
Council, at this point, I know that having talked to a number of you, there are some questions and concerns. Rather than at this point us opening the floor for official discussion, we will hold that opportunity to do a bit later. So let's just go ahead and open the floor for questions to Mr. Pace, and then we will move at the direction and pleasure of council as we proceed from there. So let's just open the floor for discussion or questions of Mr. Pace in regards to the ordinance.
Glenn,
Yes,
I've got a few things that I've gone through and highlighted and have questions about. The first is under the general section, 613.3, and start with F. It says storage structure. Now, this is in general, so this would be residential, commercial, or industrial.
correct, yes.
It says, storage structure shall not store materials considered to be hazardous according to most current edition of International Fire Code. Can you expound on that? Because if a residential storage building contains gasoline, I would assume that's considered hazardous.
If it's stored in proper containers and used for gasoline for your mowing equipment, it's not hazardous. I mean, it is very dangerous material. But again, we're getting into items that are identified under the IFC and the storage of those items as it relates to the fire codes, that they would have jurisdiction doing inspections on. They would not have jurisdiction on residential property to do inspections of storage facilities
Okay.
for residents.
On H, the placement of storage structure shall not affect the drainage of a lot.
Yes, sir.
Anytime you place any structure on undeveloped property, it's affected the drainage.
Yes, sir.
Could that be used by the enforcement of the city to say, no, you're not going, we won't allow it?
Yes. What we have there and what we've been asked for in that regards is that the new communities and all as they are developed, the structures have drainage areas that are identified as drainage areas. They have drainage easements and those type situations, and you will not be able to place a structure inside that drainage easement or that drainage way that was provided around the house. We have substantial issues now that we don't regulate with fences being in right-of-ways, particularly stockade type fences that create a damming effect of rainwaters as they're supposed to get to drainage structure.
I understand that, but that's not what H says. It just says if it affects the drainage.
Correct. We
Okay.
just do not want it to affect drainage on that lot.
Well, it's going to somehow. It's going to somehow. You know,
As normal, yes.
I mean, would it be
How
more,
about
I mean, would we say adversely
That's what-
affect?
yeah, that's what I
I mean,
was
it may be
gonna
an
do.
amendment to
Yeah.
add adverse.
I think, the way I always think about things, and this is where this question is coming from, although we're all level-headed, we know what we intend, but maybe tomorrow none of us are here and somebody else is sitting in our seat and they want to use this in a different way.
Yes.
Now, what about placing those structures on the street?
Should not be allowed anyhow due to the fact that that is public right-of-way and you're,
Well, no, the reason I said is because I saw one on the street.
okay,
It was on there for I mean, it's gone now, but it was on there for quite some time,
correct. Yeah.
So I was wondering,
anything
you know,
like that shouldn't be placed in the
But,
public
yeah,
right-of-way.
it was right on the street.
We could address that without this.
Okay.
Did you say a little while ago that inspections aren't allowed in buildings like this?
In
On property?
residential,
In residential areas, you can't do a fire inspection in an outbuilding?
no, sir, you can't do an inspection inside your home without you agreeing to that inspection.
We would think that would make you very happy.
I'm trying not to show my elation.
Oh, that's a good
That's a good thing.
On I understand where you're going with this, but there's a but to this. You can't have alphanumeric, can't be used for advertising and writing.
Yes, sir.
But going back to the residential type structure, if somebody wanted to, if they're artistic and they did it, you know, what they
Jay's
see.
man cave.
Right. Because we don't regulate how a house can be painted, do we?
And again, we're not regulating how the house or how the structure can be painted. We're just saying it has to be free of the alphanumeric. Most of these containers, as you see them,
But this
as
is
they
not, but this is
come,
not a container. This is a storage
the
structure.
storage structure.
Right. So we got to differentiate. Right now, we're talking about permanent storage structures.
Yes.
Okay. So if I was artistic, I couldn't have a storage building that had anything on it but color. That's it. Is that right?
That's the way we're proposing the ones, yes.
And then if we have any storage structures, now this is any storage structures, not containers, but any storage structure that does not comply by December 31st, 2015, have to be condemned and removed.
And or made compliant.
Okay. And to be clear, that's not, we are targeting all storage structures.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, under K, it conflicts a little bit with, under the residential zone. It is talking about a licensed contractor. The way I read this is a licensed contractor has been hired to, let's say, do an upfit on some building, and he has used a temporary container
Yes.
for storage. And he's allowed to have that on the premises for 30 days after the certificate of occupancy has been issued.
Yes, sir.
But now in the residential zone, you can only have that there for 90 days, period. Why? What's the difference?
Well, again, the intent was that the construction being used for construction, that you have a valid permit to do that construction.
No, I got that.
Okay, and then the residential portion of that is that this is a temporary storage unit for the resident there, such as a pod or other type devices that are brought on site and left for a temporary amount of time. Their
Well,
intended purpose is
well-
temporary.
I get that, but that's not what it says. It says that if I hire a contractor to renovate my home and he pulls out all of my contents and he's going to store there, or he's going to use that container to store building materials, he's got 90 days to use that container. Whether the project may take 90 days or 120 or 12 months, right?
Well, again.
You're
our
you're
intent-
correct if he's pulling contents out of the home, because the general provision is dealing with the storage of materials for the construction.
The general provision is dealing with commercial construction.
All construction, all areas.
It's intended for
That
all.
first section is for all areas.
Yes, sir.
That's why it's identified as general.
I understand that, but what it's talking about here, it says, when you go back to K, in general,
Right.
it talks about temporary location of an office, equipment, and/or material storage, but it doesn't talk about residential contents.
Well, again, our
Correct.
intent was that that's a part.
We may need to
of-
clarify it, but as it was
Yeah.
written, the intent was that that was for the construction purposes.
K. Yes.
K, yes, sir.
Yes, right.
I don't know that I'm not going to speak, I don't know that we considered or envisioned that that may have been used by the contractor for the storage of personal belongings from the home.
Right, but that's done every day.
But, and what we're saying, maybe it needs to be amended, is that if the contents of the home are brought out and put into a container, no more than 90. Now, if that isn't what it should be, maybe it needs to be amended, but that's what it's, but if those contents are brought
Yeah, I
out,
think that
they're
is-
limited to 90.
Right, okay.
The intent was to, if it relates to the construction, if it is a permit that has been issued, and part of that construction has to remove all the contents and put them into the storage unit, then yes, that would be applicable to the section K there of general.
No,
Chick-fil-A done this just recently.
No, I understand the intent, but
Right.
it's just dealing here mainly with what you would, when you read it, it seems it's just commercial, but as long as, as long as we say what we intend, that's what I'm looking for.
Well, maybe you would change the other part to something similar, say that you get 30 days after final inspection or something like that,
Right, well, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, you get a CO anyway on a residential project, so as long as it's clarified, like I say, we're not always going to be here enforcing this. Churches, Glenn, don't they normally take the zoning of what's around them, which is generally residential?
They do. It can be residential, it can be in any district.
Right.
The church can, yes.
But if you've got, let's say, a church who has a intermodal container for storage in its own residential, there's no way they can make that comply.
That would be correct, yes.
Those are the items I had questions about.
All right, others?
Just a point to bring up here under 613.3D, storage structures shall not be used for living quarters and shall not contain plumbing or heating and cooling systems. I've actually seen a lot of literature lately where people are building houses out of containers.
They are.
So we may be missing the boat there.
I think,
Time will tell.
I definitely agree. I did look at quite a few of those structures that were during the research period of this. I just think if we get something in place, then again, we need to look at amending for that type of construction to take place. Yes, sir, I think we need to do so.
I agree.
But I just think we need to have something in place before.
This is
that.
kind of a volatile category because the creativity for all of these things is really exploding.
Yes.
The way people are using all of these things.
I've done a good bit of research on those container homes that he's talking about. I mean, some architects have done some incredible things. I mean, the structural integrity of those boxes is phenomenal, and they're very cost effective. I mean, you can get into them very cheap, and the upfits are incredible. I'm telling you, you need to check these out.
I'm gonna have to.
You have to look at them. I mean, it's amazing what people are doing, and he's right. I mean, they can look
because I read, the intent of this is to preserve and to protect visual quality and character of neighborhoods. And I'm telling you, a lot of these container homes that they've made are off the charts pleasing as far as the way that they look and the way that they could fit in if you like modern architecture and housing. So it's that's probably not something that this is trying to look into. I'm assuming based on the information North Charleston gave you that there have been some creativity that's been used that's not so.
They've had people living in them, but it,
not the same way.
yeah, not the same thing.
The container might have still been at the port.
Here's what I think. I mean, this is, I went through it and there's a lot of yellow on my pages, and I think our intent, we're talking a lot about intent. Our intent is to not allow the storage containers to be an eyesore and be in places they shouldn't be.
Right.
But as we tried to put these regulations in, they're touching a lot more than just those storage containers. And
I got two other things, and I'll leave you alone.
Yes, sir.
Under industrial, both B and D limit the height that you can stack containers. I'm sure you've done a lot more research on this than I have. I want to make sure that we're not stymieing the growth of some type of business or there may be somebody that needs to stack containers 4 high in order to do what they do. I don't know what the norm is there, but I don't want it to be bad for business.
Correct, and we didn't either. Usually when they're used in the industrial and service type settings, they don't have the equipment to move them beyond that too high.
Yeah.
You start getting above that, you have to have specialized equipment, forklifts and stuff that would remove or be able to move those around.
Right.
And unless they're dealing specifically in that type of operation, the retail operation of those things, we just don't see that taking place.
I know a business that has that equipment, and they're in an industrial park right across from BMW, and they use those they use them for housing to put their controls in for a much larger company.
Okay.
And they have that forklift capability on site.
We do say that the ordinance isn't imposed or construed on interchange of freight, truck terminals, railroad freight depots, and air terminals.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we weren't imposing any restrictions that would, again, be for that exchange of freight, such as trucking terminals, railroad freight depots, and
Rylan, what section was that you were just referring to?
613.6
D.
under industrial,
Which number or letter?
B and D.
You scroll on down.
And here, and this would be my question. For industrial, why would we even want to limit that?
Well, again, my thoughts were, as a planner, that, appearance-wise, if these are not regulated enough, that if we don't have placement where they should be on a lot, that if we have them up against the road frontage and those type things, and you end up with 3, 4, 5 high containers out there, I don't think it provides very appealing access to the city in some of the
I'm trying not to be, I'm not being ugly, but I just want to throw out something. What's the difference in, I guess those containers are what, 10 feet high?
8, 6, I believe it is.
Okay, well, let's just say that you stack them 4 high and they're roughly 40 feet.
Right.
What's the difference of 40 feet of container versus 190-foot process tower? I mean,
Not
that's,
necessarily disagree with
and that's what you would find on a residential, excuse me. Right,
I
yeah.
hope we don't have that in our residential.
That's what you could find on an
Industrial site, yes.
I wanted to touch on one more thing before we just kind of backtracking here. We were talking about alternative housing, and he talked about a lot of the movements with the containers. But there's also a tiny house movement now where people are taking trailers and they're building homes on top of them. I mean, well-built homes where they're putting $25,000 and $30,000 onto a 12-foot trailer. I mean, I know it's crazy, but there's a ton of people that are doing it all over the country right now. And I think if you look at 1613.3, I believe it's G, and it says no wheels and axles. I mean, that would essentially kill any type of project like that if somebody wanted to build a tiny home, for instance, on a trailer.
And that's in concert with our existing ordinances for as mobile homes.
I figured that they were kind of, it was kind of overlap.
With that. Again, the requirements for the tiny homes are still out there. Land use wise, you can have them. Now, if it can get through the International Building Code and those issues, that may be a different situation.
Right, okay.
Do you build that and leave it on the wheel?
I mean, they do it intentionally so they can take it and up and move if they need to.
Because it doesn't have to comply with IBC.
That's right.
Because IBC actually dictates how large or how small you can build.
Yeah.
I would like to ask that back in 613.3, in that number I, or letter I, that we do a little cleanup of the language to allow some creativity and if you have an outbuilding at your home, instead of not allowing you to put alphanumeric signage in writing. I understand the advertising, but in a residence, I don't see a problem with labeling your outhouse.
Well, it's not out.
And I would like to see a little extension in the date in J.
Okay. An extension of that, you're saying?
Just somewhat, yeah. That's, you may have some people out there that have made some long-range plans, and it'd be tough for them to turn around by the end of 2015.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The question I had about the churches is my next door neighbor is a church.
Mm-hmm.
They have a storage container. They've painted the color of their building to blend, and they asked me, did I mind it? No, they use it for one of their local ministries that they do, and I don't know how this is going to. Because there's nothing they can do to make that comply, because that is considered residential. I guess the only other alternative is to go before the
Board of Appeals.
Board of Appeals.
Yes. This will be a part of zoning.
Right.
And therefore it is appealable to the Board of Appeals, any portion of it.
And you're going to require screening for these things in most cases, right? In all cases.
Well, Jay's point is, in this particular case, if it was on the property of a church, it wouldn't be applicable under the commercial zoning.
Yeah, I understand that.
I mean, not necessarily would it have to be screened if it's on commercial or industrial property.
Well, they could get their zoning changed.
Council, I've been unabashed in the fact that I have been one of the largest proponents of this legislation and have pushed it since its introduction at our last workshop. It certainly is a work in progress, and I understand that as well as y'all. And many of these come before us with that sort of designation. My intent has been that we get something on the books and we do it in a reasonable amount of time, and I even think that 18 months in terms of compliance is sufficient, because if you're not planning on being compliant within 18 months, I just don't think you're going to be planning on being compliant anyway. But the impetus behind this has been my interaction with communities that have inland ports and or ports, and the almost immediate profusion of these things that you're going to see popping up in the community in various different uses and fashions and in their placement. And as Glenn mentioned, North Charleston is a perfect example of where their legislation was more reactive than proactive, and you see many instances in the North Charleston area now where they have been either grandfathered in or were in before legislation was put in place. And there are even instances where you've got 20 and 40-foot containers in people's backyards, in some cases even built up off the ground. And I don't think that that any of us want to be in a situation where we've got a line of sight or have to deal with these containers. And part of the problem is that as we see more and more of them become available, the price of them will drop, and people view this as a cheap alternative to doing something that is more desirable and preferable in terms of a neighborhood. You also have to understand that these things are even in bad shape still a fairly substantial structure, and could be dangerous for somebody that got enclosed in one or those types of things. And so, my intent was that we got something that we got it in place, and then if there were potential problems or concerns about it, we would deal with those as we work through the issues of doing it. But you don't have to drive far to Wayne's Point. I know there have been a number of these pods that I've observed that have been placed at the edge of the road or in the road, in driveways for periods of times that well exceeded 90 days, and in some cases for a longer period of time. And it concerns me that we're now beginning to see some of the 20 and 40-foot units being placed in not only residential yards but in commercial applications where we're getting multiple units and even stacked units in some places. And I just think that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and while this may not be perfect, I'd love to see us either make some slight adjustments and move forward, or go ahead and do a reading tonight and then make some adjustments before a second reading, but that we enact at least something to begin to deal with this issue, because you can ride over to White Horse Road and see what these things look like that are stacked 4, 6, 8, 10 high in some cases on lots over there along the road. And I don't think that it's something that we'd be particularly proud of as we try and protect our community. So that's been my reasoning behind asking staff to continue to pursue this and to look at it. It is a fairly new area. It's one that Glenn's already mentioned. He had to look across the United States to address, because it's a new but growing problem. And with that, I'd like for us to at least be proactive in beginning to address it, and then we can go from there in terms of refining it. Others?
Mayor, if I may, just as a matter of procedure, because this is a zoning ordinance and it comes to you from the Planning Commission, we are not in a position that we could make amendments to bring that back to you. We would have to take that to the Planning Commission. You certainly have the ability to make those amendments. So procedurally, it would be most appropriate if there are sections of the code that you would like to amend, dates, adding terminology, that we would do that as identified by amendment. And then you would either vote on the amendments or vote on the ordinance with the amendments. But it would be difficult. It would not be appropriate for us to take the entire ordinance back, make amendments, and then bring it to you. If we were to do that, we would need to take it back to the Planning Commission.
Thank you for the clarification, and we'll proceed in that regard. Let's determine this then, Council, without it going back to the Planning Commission. Are we prepared tonight to make amendments, or would you like to hold this matter over until you've had more time to study it, and then we can come back and consider amendments, or proceed tonight? I'm at your pleasure in that regard.
I'd like to hold it over.
I would agree.
Start making some notes.
There was a lot of points brought up tonight.
All right. With that then, we'll entertain a motion to hold over.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to hold ordinance 21, 2014 over for consideration at our next meeting. With that, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
No.
Thanks, Mayor Kent.
Thank you. Council, in executive session, we've got one personnel matter and one contractual matter to consider this evening. Do I hear a motion to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, in executive session, we considered two matters, one personnel matter, one contractual matter, taking no action in that regard. To hear a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, we stand adjourned.